she was just like, your ANA is off the charts. Like, I've never seen this before. So, of course, rheumatologist and all the things and all the drugs and the prednisone. And you're at the doctor all the time. And when you get your blood drawn, it's 12 vials. And when you've got, and oh, they're telling you all the things you can't do and that, this disease is going to kill you eventually. Like they'll straight up tell you that, right? And I remember, and then and they didn't, I remember, wanting to have kids and having that conversation and being told it wasn't recommended. And I did anyway.
Hey friends, welcome back. I'm Lindsie, and today's episode is one of those conversations that stays with you because it's about more than a diagnosis. It's about identity, grief, resilience, and what it looks like to rebuild your life one choice at a time. My guest today is Annie Toro Lopez, a cookbook author, chronic illness advocate, and a powerful voice in the celiac and autoimmune community. Annie was diagnosed with lupus, SLE, in her 20s, and after years of navigating autoimmune challenges, she reached a milestone many people don't even know is possible, a negative ANA after 20 years. Then in 2023, after the heartbreaking loss of her sister and her best friend, Annie was diagnosed with celiac disease, and she transformed that season into something that now supports thousands of people. Her second cookbook, Simply Gluten-Free, Real Ingredients for Everyday Life, is all about approachable, nourishing recipes that help you reclaim confidence and joy in the kitchen, even when food feels complicated. In this episode, Annie and I talk about what it's like to be dismissed and how the right provider can change everything, the emotional reality of autoimmune illness, motherhood, and nervous system survival, the role of trauma, therapy, and mindset in healing, how a diagnosis can shake your identity and how to rebuild it, and why community might be one of the most underrated treatments we have. This conversation includes discussion of trauma and grief, so please take care of yourself as you listen. And just as a reminder, the content shared on PCOS Unfiltered is for informational and educational purposes only. The views and opinions expressed by the host and guests are not intended to serve as medical advice. Always consult with a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your diet, exercise, or treatment plan. The information shared is based on personal experience and expert interviews and is not a substitute for professional medical guidance. If you've ever felt like your diagnosis stole your identity, this one is for you. Here's my conversation with Annie Toro Lopez. Hello and welcome to Annie. Our stories aligned in a lot of ways, so I'm super excited to go through this episode with her and for our listeners to hear your story and what you've learned along the way. So let's just kind of dive in and get started. Tell us a little bit about yourself. You've had some major stuff happen. You were diagnosed with lupus, and just kind of how you overcame that.
Yeah. Well, first, I want to thank you for having me. Like, what a great opportunity, and it's a real honor to be here. So, thank you so much for that. Yeah. So, I had I was diagnosed in my early 20s. So I had symptoms when I was, younger, which I think most of us do when you're diagnosed with an autoimmune condition, right? Like it takes a while for them to figure it out. And when I was first diagnosed, I was going to a doctor for the first time that I was seeing for long enough to even notice a pattern, and I think it takes that too, and to be open to it and listen and hear, because I think, and she was a female doctor, and I think that makes a difference too, because as women, we're so dismissed with our symptoms. And so they couldn't dismiss this. So I had ulcers all over my legs. I had I had Raynaud's that I didn't understand at the time, of course, right? Like, so this was the early 80s. I'd had Raynaud's when I was when I'd gone to college. I went to UNL, the University of Nebraska in Lincoln, and winter's cold, really cold there, and like I couldn't. I remember getting to class and like not being able to hold a pencil to take notes, and my hands were like white and just like
Hmm.
the tapered fingers, all the things, right? Purple hands, all of it, the red, white, and blue syndrome.
Yeah.
So, I didn't, I think that so many times too, we don't know different. Like we don't realize that other people have different experiences, especially when we're really young.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of think like, well, everybody has this experience and it's not unique or unusual. And so I was working as a vet tech at the time, and I had long, long day surgeries and all the things, and sat down and took off my shoes. And the vet I was working for, his wife came by and was like, "What is wrong with your feet?" And I was just like, "What do you mean?" Right? And she's like, and they were purple and in bad, not in good shape,
Ah,
like bad. And then I also had like ulcers on my legs. And I always say too, like our ability, the human ability to like live in denial is it no
yep.
words, no
Yep.
words. So that was part of it. And so anyway, fortunately, she actually gave me the name of a doctor, and he was booked. We just hired this new doctor from Chicago, and her name was Teresa Hebel, amazing human. And I was one of her very first patients here. Later, she was named 5280, which is so Denver's Mile High City, and 52, a mile high is 5,280 feet. So you see 5280 referenced here a lot. And there's a 5280 magazine. And she was the number one doctor for years, like in Denver, because she was just wonderful. And I
Wow.
was so fortunate to have her. So she was like, so then I started going in with like transient symptoms that shouldn't be transient. So things like I had hyperthyroidism, and then later it was gone, like gone. And she's like, so yeah, that doesn't, that's not right. So finally I was like, do you think I'm a hypochondriac? Because as women, again, right, we're taught like, minimize and you're okay and don't do the thing. And she's like, no, not at all. She said, you come in and you have these symptoms or whatever, and we do blood tests and it confirms. And so finally she's like, I want to do an ANA and I want to test you for lupus. And I was like, I had no idea. I didn't know. I was like, okay, well, more tests, more, because that's where we live when we have lupus, right? And all the tests. And so it came back, and I remember her walking in the room, and this was a long time ago, but I remember the look on her face, and she was just like, your ANA is off the charts. Like, I've never seen this before. So of course, rheumatologist and all the things and all the drugs and the prednisone. And I was a vet tech, so I knew enough about drugs and drug interactions and such. And my vet was great too about, just information. And Terry was wonderful too about just giving me the information that I wanted. So, I mean, I'm sure people have lived that, right? It's
Oh,
it's
yeah. Yeah.
it's so much. And you're at the doctor all the time. And when you get your blood drawn, it's 12 vials. And when you've got, and oh, they're telling you all the things you can't do, and that, this disease is going to kill you eventually. Like they'll straight up tell you that, right? And I remember, and they didn't, I remember, wanting to have kids and having that conversation and being told it wasn't recommended. And I did anyway. And I didn't understand. I don't think I comprehended. Well, not I don't think. I did not comprehend at the time what it meant, like what that meant. That having an ANA, right? Like just having an ANA means that your body could just like attacking, because I had like like, the things,
You were
scan,
full blown.
kidney,
Yeah.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I didn't understand that what that meant is that like your body could be attacking fetal cells just as easily as it's attacking kidney cells or my
Mhm.
eyes or whatever the things that lupus does. And I was fortunate. I had two live births and two healthy children, but it was really, really rough. So like, at the doctor every week and all the ultrasounds and all the blood tests and all the things. And I was lucky because I had my husband had really good insurance. And I had good insurance through my husband, I guess that's what I mean. And so going there. Oh, so then both of my kids, though, of course, went into IC, went to NICU. I didn't get to hold them. I had, they were both 5 pounds. My son was induced 5 weeks early and
Oh.
I was zero dilated and zero effaced. And they're like, we're gonna have this baby because he's safer out than in. Because I didn't have an amniotic fluid. My amniotic fluid had stopped producing.
Oh, wow.
So they were doing like they did a amniocentesis, and so then they did that to make sure that his lungs were developed enough to actually deliver him.
Mhm.
So my
Wow.
body was not prepared to give birth, let's just say.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was an ordeal. And then my daughter then was also, she was just really small because I had vascular involvement, as so many of us do, right? And placenta is a vascular organ.
Mhm.
And it was just very small, both of them.
Mhm.
So then I remember my doctor kind of, pretty much sitting me down, and I was done anyway. I was not having more kids, but I remember him just saying, it's like you've got two healthy, beautiful children and they need you and no more,
You
really,
can't.
no more.
Mhm.
So, and I wasn't going to anyway, but still, it was and I think that was sort of a big, not that you don't understand, but you don't understand. You know what I mean? Like it's a lot having that understanding, then like really having them just sit down and look me in my doctor was, and he was wonderful. He was one of the best male doctors that I've ever had.
Mhm.
And he just, having him look me in the eye and just, give that to me it really was a light bulb, right? Like it really was just like, whoa. Well, after I had my son, I couldn't stop crying, like, for a long time.
Wow.
And I was really fortunate because I called my OB's office and got, his physician's assistant said, hey, well, and I told her, I was like, make it stop. Like, I'm like, make this stop. I can't handle this. And she said, sometimes when you have a child, it brings up issues in your own life or your own past. And here's the name of a really good therapist. Oh my
Mhm.
God, right? This is the 80s. Like, no one even talked about therapy, much less like hand you from a doctor's office and say, this is probably what you need. Oh my
Yeah.
God, like life saving, life saving.
Yeah.
So through therapy, I uncovered a lot of my own, I think as so many of us with autoimmune have, it's the trauma of the past. And so I had a stalker when I was 10. So for about a year, didn't tell
Mm.
anybody.
Mm.
Well, that's not true. I told one person who was my best friend, and she was shot and killed by by her brother
Oh,
accidentally.
wow. Oh my gosh.
And when you're 11, you still have like magical thinking,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And of course, we internalize everything and everything's our fault. So even like the sexual assault for a year from my stalker was internalized. Like, this is my
Mhm.
fault. And so my friend, Janice, would like walk me home from school, but then she was shot and killed. And so for me, it was just like, well, you just don't tell that story, like, right? And so I completely shut that down until I, was able to uncover that in my own therapy. And that was, of course, revolutionary for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was part of so I did reverse my lupus. I have not had a positive ANA for 20 years. I had my first negative ANA when I was 41.
Mm.
It took very concentrated and specific energy and effort. And it was, there's no magic. It was a lot of work.
Yeah.
And sometimes I was in the hospital for a week at a time. So it wasn't, um, there was a lot of work, a lot of, learning and understanding and integrating, I think, a
Mhm.
lot of that. And learning to make my story just a part of my story and not something that is based in any sort of shame, because of course, we blame ourselves for all those things. And
Yeah.
so that's why we don't tell. That's why we don't, it's because I'm bad. It's because I've done these things or whatever. And especially when you're 10. So at any time, it's any time.
Hmm.
So but it was so healing, right? So like that was part of the work that I had to do in order to learn my own value, in order to love myself, in order to realize that like I was worthy and I was enough, as we say now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was all a learning. It was all learning. Um, I think part of what really, part of the real, well, there were, I mean, a few things there, obviously, but I refuse to define myself in terms of my illness. Let me tell you now, living with celiac, ironically, there's no avoiding it. Like you have to talk about it all the time, but and it's fine. I mean, I'm healthy and I don't eat gluten and I'm fine. I'm healthy. I feel better than I felt in I couldn't even tell you how long.
Yeah.
So, um, but deciding to not define myself in terms of illness, truly deciding to define myself in terms of wellness, like, had to like really integrate that into my thoughts and how I chose to live. And it's not easy when you're dealing with that. And the other thing I found, I've talked to my daughter about this a lot, but I think at the time that um, I was married to an emotionally unavailable person. Um, at the time, I think when you're going to doctors and you're seeing them and they're all like, we've got you, we'll take care of you. You're safe here. And you are like, I mean, there's this feeling of like care and that's good. I mean, that's not negative,
Mhm.
but we lean into that when we haven't had that in other ways in our lives. And so you lean into that model and you lean into that, oh yeah, and of course you do. Like, why wouldn't you? Like I was a lonely mother and I was hurting and I was sick all the time. And why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
So I think that happens too. And then we start to define ourselves through that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think, and therapy helped me with that too, to say like, no, I want to be defined. I want to define myself by how well I am.
Mhm.
So I did a lot of different things. I mean, certainly changed up my diet, but it wasn't just that. I did visualization, and visualization is scientifically proven to impact our bodies. And I had a little cartoon that I had in my head, and I had my little and I did a lot of research about my immune system and how it works, right? Like why? Like, why? It makes no sense at all for my body to attack itself. In what world does that even make sense? So I learned a lot about my immune system. I learned what part of my body actually produces the antibody. What is it doing? Like physically, what's happening in my
Mhm.
body? If it's killing the nucleus of my cell, how does it even get to the nucleus of my cell? Does it break through the cell wall? Like, I wanted to know, like all of it.
Yeah.
And then I visualized, like, and I had my little white steed and I had my shield and I had I used vitamin C. Vitamin C, of course, is like build your veins and your
Mhm.
circular system. It's so good for so many things, so many things. And so I had my little sword of like vitamin C that was like, right? So I literally had, and it was just a fun visualization that I would do. And I would have like conversations with my immune system, like flat out, like this isn't happening. Like,
Mhm.
stop. If I have cancer or if I have the flu, you are on. Like, go for it. But just like attacking the nucleus of my cells, like needs to stop, and it needs to stop now. So I would like do that and go there and like have do those things in order. I'm like, this doesn't make sense to me. This needs to stop. And it took a long time. It took 20 years. It took 20
Wow.
years. And I mean,
Wow.
I had episodes where I had my lung collapse and I had, pericarditis and, what they call a cascade. I'm sure,
Yeah.
So, I mean, I had that too. It
Mhm.
wasn't, and I don't have all the answers here. It's a very, very, very complicated issue. And I always worked hand in hand with my doctor. I never, while I was seeking alternatives, while I was looking at Eastern medicine or acupuncture or doing chakra work or meditation or whatever,
Mhm.
she was always involved. So
Mhm.
I was fortunate that way.
Yeah. 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 I mean, you said so many good things there. So many good things. I mean, I think I just, appreciate your story, and I hope the listeners appreciate your story because, while it's not PCOS, I do believe I have some other listeners on here that have some other stuff going on, and I still think it's very relatable, in the sense of, you're given this diagnosis. Okay, now what do you do?
Right.
So, you overcame that.
It's a devastating diagnosis too.
Yeah,
This is not like, right? I mean,
yeah. For, with where you were in it for sure. Like when I was diagnosed, mine was caught early, so I didn't have the organ
right.
failure, I wasn't to any of the organ damage or anything. Um,
But it's possible. And so like that, even just that knowledge alone, just like I
mhm.
think, just knowing that it's possible and that, that's it's terrifying.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the medical community often isn't like they're not reassuring in that way, right? Like they're reassuring as far as, oh, I got you and all, but they're not reassuring in the way of
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
oh,
because yeah,
you
yeah.
can beat this. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, I think you know what I'm saying.
But in general, no. I mean, you said something about, women being dismissed and unheard, and I think that's very true. Again, I think very relatable. Um, like you mentioned, you were fortunate to have sounds like a number of providers that were very supportive and open to what you were going through. Um, and I encourage listeners to find providers like that. If they're with
Find them.
somebody that is very
Walk,
close-minded, yeah, and
walk
just wants
away.
to prescribe it exactly, then
Walk
that is
away.
not for you because that's
Mm-mm.
not going to get you feeling better. You're going to
Right.
be stuck in that
You're
cycle.
gonna live in that victim mentality.
Hmm.
And not that, and
Exactly.
I have
Wow, this conversation with Annie was so meaningful because it held the full picture, the medical side, the emotional side, and the human side. Here are a few takeaways I hope you carry with you. You are not too much for needing answers. Being persistent about your symptoms is not being dramatic, it's being wise. Healing is really one thing. Annie's story is a reminder that it can be medical care, plus mindset, plus nervous system work, plus support, plus time. A diagnosis can feel like it steals your identity, but it can also become the beginning of a new relationship with yourself, one rooted in worth, agency, and possibility. And community matters. Loneliness keeps people stuck. Connection helps people move. Annie also shared something I really loved. She didn't just wish for community, she built it. And if you're listening thinking, I don't have my people right now, let that be your permission to start small. One message, one meetup, one safe person. If you want to connect with Annie, I'm going to link everything in the show notes, her cookbook, Simply Gluten-Free, Real Ingredients for Everyday Life, and her website, AnnieToroLopez.com. She mentioned it's launching soon with links for booking, podcast interviews, and more. She also writes on Substack, and we'll include that too. And if this episode encouraged you, the best way to support the show is to leave a rating and a review and share it with someone who needs hope that healing is still possible, even if it's messy and nonlinear. Thank you for being here. I'm sending you so much love, and I'll see you in the next episode of PCOS Unfiltered. Nourish, Heal, Thrive.